Good morning, viewers. Hello and welcome to the Morning News Show, where we bring you the latest headlines and insightful stories to kickstart your day. I'm Koina Sharma and you are watching CNN News 18. First up, on top of this bulletin, we're tracking some breaking inputs where External Affairs Minister Jaishankar has given a big remark. Now, amid the US tariff threats, Jaishankar has now responded and said that US bold foreign policy are not surprising, and what came is what was expected. He's also addressed that Russia-Ukraine war issue and India's role in de-escalating the entire crisis. He said that India is in touch with Putin and Zelensky both, and PM Modi has met the leadership and held talks over the matter. Now, addressing the entire issue also on Kashmir, Jaishankar said, and I quote, "Kashmir issue is mostly solved," adding further that India is waiting for the return of the stolen part of the Kashmir. These are the latest inputs that we're tracking from the ground. But now, first take a look at what External Affairs Minister S Jaishankar had to say.
On Kashmir, actually we have done, I think, a good job solving most of it. I think removing Article 370 was step number one. Then restoring growth and economic activity and social justice in Kashmir was step number two. Holding elections, which were done with a very high turnout, was step number three. I think the part we are waiting for is the return of the stolen part of Kashmir, which is on the under illegal Pakistani occupation. When that's done, I assure you, Kashmir solved. It's interesting. And I think, and some of it, I must say in all honesty, is not surprising. If you actually tracked it and assume that most of the time, political leaders at least do much of what they promise to do. I think we see a president and an administration which in our parlance is moving towards multipolarity, and that is something which suits India. We've never had any issues with American presidents, at least in recent times. There's no baggage which we carry or burden that the relationship carries. I think from President Trump's perspective, the one big shared enterprise that we have is the Quad. And the Quad is an understanding where everybody pays their fair share. My Prime Minister has been talking to President Putin and to President Zelensky. We have met with the presidents, the ministers, the national security advisors, the defense ministers. In the summer of 2022, at that time, the Black Sea grain corridor was sought to be constructed. And there were some hesitations in Russia. So a few other countries approached us to, including Turkey, which had the lead, to press the Russians on that. We did that. When the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant came under firing, we actually were approached by the Ukrainians to pass messages on to the Russians, which we did, and they had something to say, which we communicated back. We worked a little bit with Mr. Grossi in IAEA on that. We have never advised them what should be the format and what should be the terms of the negotiations. That is their business.
Well, in response to the US's tariff threats, External Affairs Minister S Jaishankar emphasized that such bold foreign policy moves from the US were not unexpected. He's also acknowledging that the current stance was in fact anticipated. Now, to get us a better perspective on the entire situation is joining us our correspondent Siddhant. A very good morning, Siddhant. Siddhant, let's first talk about US tariff threats. Now, EAM has already mentioned that the US's bold foreign policy was on the expected lines. Can you also elaborate on how India actually plans to navigate these tariff threats?
Well, Kohina, even back in Trump's first tenure, in fact, when at that point in time the world was worried and there were many unwanted commentary being made by world leaders for Trump administration when he came to office for the first time. At that time, EAM Jaishankar said that don't demonize Trump, analyze Trump. Perhaps that really worked in India's favor. This time around, again, there is a lot of concern. In fact, with the way Donald Trump handles his office, perhaps tariffs, right, etc., etc. But speaking at a Chatham House in London, perhaps Mr. Jaishankar has spoken about the positive side of President Donald Trump. At the same time, he indeed highlighted that, yes, there are concerns as far as tariff threat is concerned, to which he said that Donald Trump has a certain view on trade. We had an open conversation when Prime Minister Modi went to United States to meet him, and in fact, both sides agreed to have a bilateral trade agreement. And our trade minister, Minister Piyush Goyal, is in DC right now doing exactly the same. So that was his response, a very balanced response. But when it comes to telling the word about the positive side of Donald Trump's presidency, perhaps Mr. Jaishankar has elaborated it that how President Trump is committed to keeping energy prices reasonable. He gives emphasis to technology that offers a lot of opportunities for India. He's also open to connectivity initiatives, and also he mentioned Quad, and he said that we all have a fair share in the Quad. Perhaps speaking about the positive side of his presidency, that how he's focusing on keeping the energy prices low, he's focusing on technology, which will be helpful to India, and his connectivity initiative. So India always had a very positive and optimistic approach for Trump presidency. India has never been a country, not just this time, but even back in his first term also, to criticize his presidency or perhaps be critical or make unwanted statements. And Mr. Jaishankar made it very clear that the political leaders all across the world, when they promise something in the run-up to the election, then they deliver it when they come to power. They may or they may not, and that is exactly what President Trump is doing.
Right, Siddhant. Now let's turn our focus to the global geopolitics, where Jaishankar has also addressed the fact that India's proactive role in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict has been very solid, where so far India has maintained the neutral stance, managing both the countries diplomatically. How does India plan to continue its diplomatic engagement with both the Western and Eastern powers, especially at a time when there are rising global tensions?
That's right. And in fact, this is not for the first time that Mr. Jaishankar has spoken about India's contribution.
Indeed.
India has a very balanced view on Russia and Ukraine. In fact, Prime Minister Modi reiterated many times that India is not neutral. India is on the side of peace. In fact, Mr. Jaishankar said that India has met both presidents, defense minister, and NSAs of both countries, Russia and Ukraine. In fact, he also spoke about that how India contributed positively during the Black Sea grain corridor and was to be constructed, and Turkey approached India to seek India's help. Then nuclear power plant came under firing. At that time, Ukrainians approached India to pass on the message to Russia. So India has always been helping both sides, perhaps, because in the unique position of India is that India speaks to everyone.
Indeed.
So if there is a message that needs to be passed on, if there is a perspective that needs to be passed on, India has done in the past, and India has officially said that. And same thing has been recreated by EAM Jaishankar again. But he also made a very, very valid point and very important point. He says that we have never advised on format of peace talks or terms of negotiations. We have never done a peace plan or put out a particular view because we don't think that's appropriate. Believe negotiations should be direct. So the thing which has emerged out of his interview yesterday in London is that India is more in favor of direct negotiation. The talks should be direct. Perhaps he has also made it very clear that India has not proposed any plan or a deal or an offer so far in between the two countries, but India is in favor of direct negotiation.
Right. Siddhant, let's talk about the Kashmir issue, where a significant statement regarding the entire issue was also given by Jaishankar, where he stated it is mostly solved and India is waiting for the return of the stolen part. So could you please elaborate on this and what it actually means and what steps India is actually taking regarding the return of the stolen part of Kashmir?
Yes. So when he says that stolen part, then that part is the part of Kashmir which is occupied by Pakistan. And he says that when that's done, I assure you, Kashmir problem is solved. So, Kuhina, in last few months, there have been deliberate attempts at the international level, perhaps, to rake up the issue of Kashmir. In fact, not just Pakistan has done that, but the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights perhaps also made referred to Kashmir in his remarks. Perhaps we heard a very strong statement coming from India, Arindam Bagchi, perhaps, who had put forth India's side in the United Nations. So again, speaking on the Kashmir issue, EAM Jaishankar spoke about how Kashmir held elections, which were done with a very high turnout, was step number 3. He also said that the part we are waiting for is the return of the stolen Kashmir. So India has always been, talking about how the tourism is flourishing in Kashmir, how the reforms are now helping the people of Kashmir, and how there have been a provincial elections held successfully. And the only thing which is left is the return of stolen part of Kashmir, a Kashmir which is occupied by Pakistan, to be returned to India, and then the Kashmir problem would be solved. Perhaps Mr. Jaishankar has always spoken about Kashmir problem like this. He said that there is no problem. The only problem is that when Pakistan will return the issue, the stolen part, then the problem would be solved. If I refer to his famous quote a few years back when he said that wake up and sip the coffee, when he was asked about Article 370 getting abrogated.
Right, Siddhant, thank you so much for bringing in all those details. Well, Akanksha also joins us on the broadcast. A very good morning, Akanksha. Akanksha, Jaishankar's remarks so far have underscored India's firm stance on global issues, from US trade tensions to the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the Kashmir dispute. But could you elaborate on how India plans to balance its relationships largely with both Russia and the West amid the ongoing global challenges to begin with?
Yes, I think, Kohina, I think it's important to put this into perspective, that India's rise and role in the world was one of the sessions at the Chatham House think tank in London, where the External Affairs Minister was, and we all know that he's on a trip to the United Kingdom, which will be followed by a visit to Ireland as well. And this is where he emphasized on India's role on multipolarity as well. He's talked about also how Donald Trump's reciprocal tariffs will be something that, the Indian government is very much involved in, negotiating as far as a trade deal is concerned. And that president and an administration is, in our parlance, moving towards multipolarity, and that is something which suits India, is what the External Affairs Minister said. But now coming to when he was asked about India mediating or de-escalating tensions in Ukraine, he's gone on to talk about how India has been one of the countries right from the beginning or the start of the war, has been engaged actively with both parties, whether it is Russia or Ukraine, both the presidents, and at various levels, from presidents to defense ministers and NSAs from Russia and Ukraine, both have been engaging with Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Indian, defense ministers, or even our own External Affairs Minister. He talked about how India had brokered the 20. In fact, he says that India had played a very significant role when Turkey approached India for the 2022 Black Sea grain corridor to be constructed. And when the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant came under firing, it was the Ukrainians who approached India, and India passed on the messages to Russians. And we work very closely with the, International Atomic Nuclear Authority, which is the IAEA, under the aegis of DG Mr. Grossi. And he's also talked about how India believes that there should be a certain degree of autonomy between two parties that are involved in peace negotiations. He says while he respects the U.S. point of view, the fact that India has never made or chalked out a proper peace plan or dictated any terms of conditions, he believes that it is only appropriate that parties, the two parties that are involved, should, perhaps have direct negotiation.
Right, Akanksha, thank you so much for bringing in all those details and summing it up. Jaishankar's comments largely reflect India's balanced and assertive approach to navigating global tensions, maintaining key relationships and addressing regional issues. But how will India actually navigate through these tensions that are escalating on world level? We'll continue to track all those details. But now